Today's speaker and trainer is going to be Adityan. As you all very familiar with him, I think you know about him a lot right now. Last week we had a good session.
So let me give a very brief introduction about myself before I get into today's topic. My name is Adityan Tirchuri and I'm having around 7 years and quarter years of experience in the Salesforce ecosystem, and I'm holding around 10 certifications. I'm into LinkedIn, and you can see my LinkedIn URL, my Trailblazer URL as well. I am also into blogging. I usually write more number of blogs related to Apex. If you get some time, maybe you can pay a visit over there as well. And then let's get into today's topic. I'm going for DML. DML, when elaborated, becomes data manipulation language. As part of Soql or as part of SOS, we are just able to query for the records, but we are not able to do any manipulation to them. You can just see the records. You are just fetching them to view them. But if you want to do some manipulation, then that specific concept is called DML, data manipulation. As part of Soql, we are just fetching them, but as part of DML, whatever records you have fetched, you are manipulating them. It's not only for the records that you have fetched, you can also insert some records by using DML. Okay, when we speak about DML, which elaborated becomes data manipulation, you're trying to manipulate some data which is present in the database, then DML operations will be considered as atomic. Okay, let's take a pause here and understand what is this atomic. If you remember, I told you that the request plus response is called a transaction, a round trip. This round trip is called a transaction, and any transaction should obey 4 properties. Acid properties is what it is called as: atomicity, consistency, isolation, and then durability. These are the properties that are to be obeyed. Atomicity, okay, fine, let me not go too deep. I will just speak about atomicity. You can try to understand what CID, by googling by yourself. Try to have that as your area of exploration. I'm just speaking only about A here. So what does this atomicity mean? Atomicity means that whenever a transaction is being performed, either complete the transaction 100% or roll back whatever has been done. There should be no in between. I will take one good example which we all can relate. I am trying to transfer 100 rupees from my account to my friend's account. So what will happen internally? I'm trying to transfer money from account A to B. This is how it is. So technically speaking, what will happen is A minus 100, B plus 100. That is what is actually happening. If you look at the logic, so 100 rupees is being deducted from my account, 100 rupees is being added to my friend's account. So A minus 100 is happening, B plus 100 is happening. Once A minus 100 happened, there was a power interruption, and so nothing got executed after this. There was a power interruption and nothing got executed after this. Now I got to know that, okay, amount got deducted from my account, but they were not credited into my friends because program execution got stopped here itself. Then what did I do? I again reinitiated the transaction. But then what happened? After me doing the reinitiation, this time the network was good, power was also stable. This happened. But unfortunately, I lost 200 rupees for doing this transaction. If you see here, I have lost 200 rupees. Why? Because there was some interruption in the middle. If you remember, quite few years ago, this situation used to occur when you're trying to do some transaction by using net banking, or when you try to go to ATM and when you're trying to perform some withdrawal. Though you were not able to still collect the cash, but still it shows that the amount has been withdrawn from your account because of this specific reason, and used to go submit a letter stating that I made something like this, but this was unsuccessful, so amount has to be credited. Used to submit a request. Based on the request, they used to again do the refunding, but that's not our problem here. That used to happen few years back. That was completely resolved now. Why? Because atomicity is not being obeyed properly. But now what atomicity says is, whenever a transaction is being happening, when it's a transaction, it doesn't need to be a bank transaction. Means you're trying to send something to a request and server is sending you something in response. During the process of this, something happened, and then what should happen? We should not leave it at the current state till whatever we have performed. Whatever we did so far should be rolled back completely. That is what it says. It should not be left in between. It should be rolled back completely. Now let's take the same example. A minus 100, B plus 100. 100 rupees got deducted, and then they were not created into the account. Now what will happen? System will immediately roll back the changes whatever happened. So this will be rolled back. When this rolled back, A will get 100 rupees instantly. Now if you go to an ATM and if you try to withdraw some money, and if the money did not come from ATM, but if you receive an SMS stating that money has been withdrawn, within no time you will be getting an SMS stating that amount has been added back because of the atomicity. A minus 100, whatever this happened, this has been immediately reverted back, due to which you are immediately credited. This is what atomicity means. Now in the same way, when you are trying to perform some DML operation, now you are trying to perform DML operation on two objects, on account object and also on contact object in a single transaction. You are trying to update an account and you are trying to update contact in a single transaction. Account update was successful, but contact update was not being successful. Now what should happen? Should the account be updated or not the contact means? No, that's not how the system works. What will system try to do? System will roll back the changes that you made for account also. So before starting of the transaction, whatever state you are currently having, the same state will be brought to you back if the transaction is unsuccessful. But if the transaction is successful, then yes, well and good. So there is nothing like leaving in between. It will be either done completely or none. That's it. That is what it is all about. Atomic. I mean, the concept of acid properties are actually very good. You can relate with your real-time examples. So I recommend you people to go through it. They might not really help you in writing Apex code, but it's a good concept, acid properties. Then what operations can we perform by making use of this DML means insert. Insert is more like creation of a record. You're creating a new record. Insert is speaking only about a new record. You're inserting means that is not present. Then update. Update means you're updating something which is already present in the system. Upsert. Upsert is more like insert plus update. If the record is present, it will update. If the record is not present, it will upsert. Delete, basically self-explanatory. Undelete speaks about a record that is present in the recycle bin and you're trying to retrieve it back. So these are the, primarily speaking, these are the four operations. Upsert, it is still either doing update or insert only, but still upsert is also an operation. But I primarily feel that insert, update, delete, undelete are the DML operations that we have in Apex. Upsert is also an operation, but still I'm not considering upsert as a real-time operation because it is either doing update or insert. These four are the DML operations that we have. Then let us quickly go through some examples and I will show you how DMLs can be done and we can go into triggers. Now what should we do? First thing, let's take an example. To insert an account record by populating all the required field values. We don't know how to perform DML. We just know that there is a concept called DML and which follows atomicity. Yes, that's what we understood. Now how can we insert a record? First, before insertion of a record, let us see what are the mandatory fields. So when I click on new, I see that only name is the mandatory field. Okay, fine. So let's insert a record by making use of name. How to insert a record? First thing, whenever you are trying to insert a record, identify the object. That is the first step. I will make a note of these things and maybe I can share it. Identify the object. So what is the object now? Account is our object. If it is a custom object, you will be adding _c. For this object, create an instance and initialize it. Okay. This is called initialization. We are doing this. Create an instance and initialize it. This is the process. Then ACC dot, like how we are doing dot operator for all the list variables that we have created. In the same way, we have created a variable for our account. And for this specific variable, we are defining the values for the corresponding attributes. Attributes are nothing but the fields here. So what is the field that we have to populate? We have to populate value for this field called account name. Account name is the label and name is the developer name that I have to make use of it. Account name is equal to test DML. This is what I'm trying to give. Now, if you see here, why did I keep this in single quotes? Because I know that this field is of type text. Though the field is of type text while creation of a field, but when I speak from the technical point of view or when I speak from the programmatic point of view, the corresponding data type which is capable of holding a value of type text is string. And I know that the prerequisite for assigning value to a string data type is to enclose the value in single quotes. And then what should I do? I just have to insert it. Just to say insert ACC. That's it. This is how you perform a DML operation. Nothing major. Just create an object. I mean, identify the object name, create an instance, and initialize it. Because if you do not initialize, you will be getting a null object. So what do you mean when you try to do something like this? It will be given an empty space. In that empty space, what are you trying to do? You are trying to populate value for this specific name field, and then you are trying to insert it. Now let me click on, before I do this, what I will do is I will try to give system.debug acc.id, so that with this ID I can see, or let me not do this for now. Later I will do. I'm on accounts here and I'm clicking on execute. There is no such a record with name test DML in my system. Just to be sure, I'm just making a search. Yes, there is no such record by name test DML in my system. Now I am trying to insert an account record by name test DML and I'm clicking on execute. Okay, something happened. Now if I come to the logs, it did not throw me any error, and while clicking on execute only, it should throw me an error, right? So no error came up. I am assuming that it went fine. Now I am coming here, clicking on search all. Now if you see, account record got inserted. How many fields got populated? Only one field got populated, because I have populated only value for this account name. This property is a formula, so it is stamping. You ignore this. Only account name got populated. How means? Because I have inserted a record, something like this. Now what I wanted to do, let me go into the next example. To update an account record, okay, to update an account record. So let's try to update the same account record. Rather than saying it as test DML, I want the name to be test update. I want the name to be test update. Okay, same thing. What you have to do is do it. It won't be no change in that. Then I have to update it as test update. Okay, fine, do it. And then say update ACC. But when you do this, just this, how will the system understand which record has to be updated? There are many records in my system. How will the system understand? Yes, system understand that this is the object, but which record should the system update? How are you trying to tell to the system that this is the specific record that I am expecting you to update? How are you telling to the system? There is no way for that. Then this system is not able to understand. There is no way for the system to understand that this is the specific record that has to be updated when you write something like this. So you have to find a way in order to convey to the system that this is the specific record, and the way you're identifying should be so sure that there are no duplicate entries. So then we have to identify a field which is easy for the system to pick a record, and that is nothing but the record ID. Record IDs are something which is so easy for the system to identify as a record. So copy this and just say acc.id is equal to this. Now when you do, what will the system do? System will try to identify a record of this specific ID, and whatever fields you mention after this, all those fields will get updated. So whenever you are trying to perform something on an existing record, make sure that you are specifying ID for the system to proceed further. If you do not specify ID, system cannot identify the record for which you are trying to make some manipulation. So I just mentioned acc.id is equal to something, and I'm clicking on execute highlighted. Now I am coming to the same record. We have seen that the record name was test.dml, and I'm reloading this page. And now if you see, the record got updated with name as test update. So what did I do? I just created an instance and initialized it. I manipulated all the field names, whatever names I have to give, I did everything. And then for the system to identify that this is the record that has to be picked for doing the respective manipulations, I mentioned the ID. Once I mentioned the ID, system became smart enough. System understood that this is the record for which something should happen. What is that something that should happen? Update should happen. This is how I did. Then third example, to update an account record by using Soql. Okay, now there is a requirement stating that update a record by name test update. There is a requirement stating that for this specific record, update the name as test Soql. This is what the name should be. For now, the required, let's try to implement it in a different way. Yes, this works absolutely fine, and this is the best efficient approach, but I wanted to show you the other way also. What you can also do is account ACC is equal to, now you can write a Soql query also. Select ID comma name from account where name is equal to test update, and then I'm keeping here limit 1. Why am I adding limit 1 here? Because if you do not add limit 1, this Soql query, usually the default nature of a Soql query is to return you list of records. Though this query is capable of fetching only one record, but still as the default nature of a Soql query is to give you list of records, The left hand side variable is not capable of holding list of records. This is just account ACC, not list of account. As it is just ACC, for the system to understand that, okay, I'm querying only for one record. How are you telling to the system that you're querying for only one record? By specifying limit 1. Though this will fetch only one record, we never know. There could be multiple records. Then how will the system understand? Due to which it is a prerequisite that whenever you are having just an S object instance before the equal to, you should either keep limit 1 or use ID in your where clause, because when you use ID, only one record will come up. So this is what we are trying to do now. Then what you can do, acc.name is equal to test Soql update ACC. You're not explicitly specifying the ID, because this ACC record is holding the corresponding record which you wanted to look at. This ACC is holding the corresponding record. Now ACC is holding the corresponding record. Then what are we trying to do? We are just trying to manipulate the name field here by giving update. Even this will work just fine. Now I'm coming over here, just clicking on reload button. And if you see, it got updated with test as Soql. Both of them are doing exactly the same thing, but if you know the ID, you don't have to write a Soql query. Then let's look into the next example. To delete a record by using ID. Let me not use this record. Let me identify some other record. Let me go to account only. I will open some other account and I will try to delete it. I want to delete this specific record. Again, very simple. Account ACC is equal to new account. acc.id is equal to something. Delete ACC. When you want to delete a record, if you just give ID to the system, that is more than enough. You don't really have to tell that this is the name, this is the billing city. You're trying to delete, just ID is enough for the system. When you do this, system will immediately do the deletion. First exceptional row 0 opportunities. Okay, it is having some dependencies due to which it is not allowing me to. So first let me delete the dependency. You ignore that because I have some validation in place due to which it came up. Now when I click on execute highlighted, see, deletion happened. Now if I come and reload this page, record deleted. So what did we do for deletion? Because it is an existing record, you are telling to the system that this is the record for which you want to perform an operation. How are you telling to the system that this is the record that has to be deleted? By specifying the ID. Now let's try to delete let's try to delete a record by using similar approach of what we did over here. What you can do is, again, account ACC is equal to select ID from account, where if you want to delete a record by making use of name field, you are not comfortable with using ID. Is this having any dependencies? Let me quickly check. No opportunities, fine. So let me use this limit 1 and then I am selling delete ACC. Now when I execute this, see, deletion went successful. Record got deleted. So this is for insertion, this is for updation. These two are for updations. So for the system to understand that this is the record, you either have to write a Soql query so that the system will understand, okay, this is the record, or provide ID for it. Same applies for deletion also. So this is how we will be doing DMLs. Now let's identify some complex scenarios. These are pretty basic scenarios. Now let's identify some complex scenarios to get enough hands-on. To insert multiple records in a single DML operation. Okay, I think someone asked this question. I think with this, we will be able to understand. Now what I want to do is, I want to insert 3 account records. I want to insert 3 account records. So let me do that. Account ACC is equal to new account. acc.name is equal to test2. Let me give the name as test1 over here. Insert ACC. Then I am trying to give it as test3. Now I am trying to insert like this. Now if you see here, insert ACC 1 DML statement, insert ACC 2nd DML statement, insert ACC 3rd DML statement. Let's remember this, and I'm closing this for now. I'm just trying to open an existing debug log, and if you see here, if I scroll down into the log that got generated, I see that number of Soql queries 1 out of 100, number of SOSL 0 out of 20, number of DML statements 1 out of 150, which means that there are some limitations for us which we have to also take into consideration while performing a transaction. What are they? Whenever you are trying to perform a transaction, you cannot execute more than 100 Soql queries. If you perform more than 100 Soql queries, the transaction will be rolled back. It will be giving us an exception stating that 101 Soql exception. Now you can ask me, what is this? This is nothing but governor limits. This is a new term that you have to be aware of. Governor limits. What are governor limits? Governor limits are the limits that are enforced by Salesforce just to ensure that we are not actually unnecessarily consuming the resources. It is just to make sure that we have to follow best practices. We have to consume less number of resources, right? Efficient programming. They gave us some limitations called governor limits. In a single transaction, you cannot have more than 100 Soql queries. In a single transaction, you cannot have more than 150 DML statements. Now, how should we do it? They said that you cannot have more than 150 DML statements, but they did not say that you cannot insert more than 150 records. They said that only one statement can be there, but how many records can be there? 10,000 records can be there. Now, you can ask me, only 150 statements are available, but 10,000 records are available. How does it means? How does it make sense? Means what you can do is at this point of time, understand the significance of collection. List of account lstacc is equal to new list of account. Add this into the list. Let me give different names for all of this because it will sell duplicate names. And then insert this list. Now if you see how many DML statements are there, there is only one DML statement, but how many records are we actually trying to do? 3 records. This is how with a single change you are able to make sure that your code is optimized and is working in the most efficient way possible. This is how we do. And as one of our friends said, like why what is the way in order to add a list, add an entry into a list while creation itself, means yes, even that can be done. So here what I will do, I will open curly brackets. In this curly bracket, I will say ACC comma, ACC1 comma, ACC2. That's it. You can do it in this way as well. Now if I click on execute, I am trying to insert 3 records, but with how many DML statements? Only one DML statement. That is why if I scroll down here, you see that only one DML statement got executed. But how many rows? 3 rows. So out of 10,000, 3 is pretty much fine. But only one DML statement is being executed. In the same way, now if you see here, for updating a record, this is better when compared with this. Reason being, this is actually consuming a Soql query, and we have a limitations on Soql queries. You cannot have more than 100 Soql queries in a limit. As you are unnecessarily writing a Soql query, this is unnecessarily consuming some resources, and that might lead to hitting governor limits. So make sure that you are trying to use this approach whenever possible than this. There could be some instances where you have to write a Soql query, and yes, that's inevitable. In that scenario, just go for it. But if at all you know the idea of the record, go for this, be it for deletion or be it for updation. So this is how we are actually trying to do the DML. Okay, then database class. Now what I wanted to do is I wanted to introduce one validation rule in place. I will just take 1 minute and I will write a validation rule. Make other type as required. I think I already have one validation rule, so I'll just try to leverage this is equal type other type. Okay, this validation rule is telling that if at all user is trying to update a record or insert a record by choosing type as other type is mandatory. Other type is mandatory. Now what I will quickly do is for this ACC2, I'm gonna give type as other. Now I'm clicking on, I'm not populating value for other type, so that I wanted to see if the validation rule will actually fire or not. This record is absolutely fine. This record is absolutely fine. But for this record, I have given some erroneous data. I gave value for type as other, but I did not give value for other type. And there is a validation rule which will block me. Let me see how will the system behave now. Clicking on execute. Now if you see here, nothing happened. Though the other 2 records are absolutely fine, even those insertion did not happen. If you see here, the status is failed. Field custom validation other type must be populated when chosen as other. Okay, so because as this record is erroneous, all the other 2 records are also stopped from being entering into the system. Now I understand that this is important for me, but my requirement is kind of in a way that do not stop it. If there are 3 records, if only one record is erroneous, only stop that specific record, allow the other 2 records. I want other 2 records to be allowed. I want partial DML to be allowed. I do not want, just because one record is fault, I do not want the other records to be stopped. I partial DML to be allowed. So how can I do partial DML? Means there is a way for you, rather than writing the statement as just insert, just say database.insert and then say false. Now, if you click on execute, what will happen? Only this record will be blocked and other 2 records will be allowed. We call this as database class. Now, if I click on execute, you see the status is successful. Now, let me also quickly go into accounts to see if there is any record created with name as test3. I see that test3 is present. How come? 3/4/2022 10:43 p.m. Let me, I'm not sure if this was created now or if it was created earlier. So what I will do is I will delete every record.
You tried with that, no? Previously, you tried with the list.
Yes. So what I'll do is I'll delete every record that was created today so that we can clearly observe where created date is equal to today. If you see here, I can also make use of something like this because I'm giving insert and then list name. In the same way, I can give you delete space list name. And rather than giving a list variable, I can also write a Soql query because this Soql query is nothing but list of S object. So delete space list of S object. So I'm clicking on execute highlighted. Now if I come here and if I try to reload, nothing is coming because all the records got deleted. Now what I will do is I will just try to do this. I'm trying to insert 3 records and out of 3 records, 2 records are erroneous. And when I just gave insert, we found that entire transaction got rolled back. Now I am making use of database.insert here. Now when I click on execute, yes, I do not see any error coming up. But when I come here and when I try to observe, I see that only 2 records are present. Third record is not present. Reason being, for the third record, we are having an error. Now you can ask me, yes, this is fine for me. Partial DML is actually a good feature. But how will I know which record got failed? How will I understand the record that got failed? Means I'm not going too deep into this concept. I will tell you the process, but I'm not going to implement it. So for this, you have to understand a class called database class because we are using database dot right, which means database is a class. So we have something called as database class here. In this database class, there are some variables and there are some methods that will tell you which record has been failed and how to capture that specific record. If you still need it, tell me at the end. I will provide you the snippet for it. I have that snippet with me, but I don't want to spend time on writing that specific logic for now. But remember that we have something called as database class. Every keyword that you see in Apex is almost a class behind the scenes. So you have to understand what methods are available, what are the specific provisions, what are the limitations in order to proceed further while writing your code. So 2 things. 1, your code should be understood by the system in order to do the translation. 2, it should be written in an efficient way such that it is consuming less resources as possible and providing the best output. So this is how you have to do it. So database.insert is something which I want you people to be aware of because this is allowing you to do partial DMLs. Because I told you that it is more like atomic. Yes, it is atomic. If you see here, this is atomic. As part of the entire transaction, you are explicitly telling to do it as partial. Rather, if you do not specify it explicitly, then what will happen? Everything will be rolled back. This is one way of again handling an exception. You are trying to stop your transaction from getting into failed status. You made the status of your transaction as pass. How? By skipping this. This is again one way of handling an exception. There are still other ways, but this is one such way. So this is about DMLs. I'm not really going too deep into DMLs because we will cover DMLs in our triggers. So this is about DMLs. I will just take 2 minutes for questions and then we will go into triggers. Any questions?
So now the transaction got success when we have used database.insert, right? So how many DML operations has consumed right now?
Only one operation. How many DML statements do you see in the entire snippet?
Okay, like
only
if
one,
we
right?
use individually, like for
Same
every
thing.
record.
If you use insert here, insert here, insert here.
Yes.
3 DMLs will be there, but everything will be rolled back.
Everything.
If you use database.insert here, database.insert here, database.insert here, then transaction status will be successful. 3 DMLs.
But for the third one, according to the logic, it should get failed, right? So even it will be get consumed, or
yes, consumptions happen. The statement got executed, right?
okay.
Statement execution happened. Leave about the status of it. Statement execution happened, right?
So even if the record gets fails also, it may consume, right?
Yes, yes, yes.
Oh,
See, because it got executed only, record got failed, right?
okay, fine. Got it.
So this is
Hi,
also
Aditya.
called mixed DML.
Mixed DML, it's too early to speak about it. I'm sorry, I don't want to discuss about mixed DML. Okay, I'll give it a high level. There are two kinds of objects, setup objects and non-setup objects. In a single transaction, you cannot perform DML on both setup objects and non-setup objects. You can perform DML on only setup objects or only non-setup objects, but not both in a single transaction. There are ways which you can solve by using asynchronous apex. We have one session asynchronous apex for that. So mixed DML is about performing DML on setup objects and non-setup in a single transaction.
Aditya,
Yes.
I have created an account like test DML. It is created by using insert. Whenever I'm trying to update, I have used a select query, but it is
Okay.
creating new record. Like it is creating new record. It is not updated. I have used a different object. Because of this, it is creating new record, or why it is not updating?
Okay. Can you share the snippet? I can't really tell. Or
Can I share?
can we do it at the end, please?
Yeah,
Just
sure.
have it with you. At the end, maybe you can show the snippet and I
Yeah,
can
sure.
guide you.
Sure.
Okay. Harjan, how can we use undelete? Same like update and delete, no difference. Just provide the ID and perform undelete.
Can you show an example for that?
Okay, I need to have the ID. So first what I will do is I will identify this specific record. I will copy this.
First, can we run a Soql query for status equal to deleted?
We can do that as well. I want to show both the approaches. Delete ACC. I'm deleting this specific record. If I come here, I won't be seeing this record. Then I'm coming here. I'm just trying to say undelete. Now if I come here and if I try to reload this, the record came. Is it clear?
Yeah, yes. Thank you.
Now I will show it by using Soql query. I'm trying to delete it. Clicking on execute. The record got deleted. Now I'm trying to fetch the same record by writing a Soql query. Select ID from account where ID is equal to so and so, and then undelete ACC. But let me tell you, this Soql query will not fetch the records that are present in the recycle bin. So for this, what do we have to do? We have to add an extra keyword by name all rows. If you remember the last session, I mentioned this. Only when you specify all rows, records from the recycle bin are also taken into consideration. So now as you are specifying all rows, the corresponding record will be fetched. And when you do this, the operation happens. So this is how it will be done. But nevertheless, it's more like update and delete only.
Yeah, got it, Aditya.
Okay. Okay, fine. I'm proceeding with triggers. I still have only 1 hour. So I think, yep, pretty much I can close this. Yeah. Then, so what is a trigger? I do not have any presentation for trigger because I want to have this more like a hands-on session. So for every scenario I try, I will just make it in my notepad. So what is a trigger? Trigger is a apex component. It is an apex component. What is it for and why is it for? Trigger is an apex component that gets executed automatically. You're not trying to go and call a specific method. You're not telling to the system that call this, or you're not going and clicking on a button. Trigger is something which is written in apex, and so we call it as apex component, and this gets executed automatically. When you say automatically, does it execute whenever it wants? Means no, there is some specific scenario for that. So what is that? Means there are some, what are a DML event happen, immediately a trigger gets executed. Now you can ask me, okay, fine, I understood. So which means that if I try to delete a record, will the trigger gets fired? Means yes, when you're trying to delete a record, trigger gets fired. But there are some points that you have to take into consideration. Okay, what are they? First thing, triggers are object specific, which means you will be writing trigger on a specific object, like how you write validation rule on an account object, like how you write workflow rule on an account object. In the same way, you will be writing your trigger on a specific object, and on this specific object, if any DML happens, only then the trigger on that object will fire. Let me take an example. You have written trigger on opportunity object and you are trying to update. So now will the trigger on my opportunity fire? Means no. For your trigger on opportunity to get fired, any record on your opportunity should get updated or inserted or deleted. Any DML should happen on the opportunity for your opportunity trigger to get fired. That is what object specific means. Now, second thing, trigger is event centric. What does it mean? Like how you are specifying your object name on your trigger, and in the same way, you are also specifying your events on your trigger. You can say that let my trigger fire only for insert. When you say let your trigger fire only for insert, trigger will not fire when you're trying to do any update or when you're trying to do any deletion or any undeletion. Trigger will not fire. So the point that you have to take into consideration in order to determine if your trigger will fire or not is these two things: object specific and event centric. Trigger will be written on an object, and in your trigger you can specify the event. When I say event, DML event, you can tell should it be insert or update or delete or undelete. Based on that, you will determine. Now, if I tell you that I have an opportunity trigger which fires on insertion, now if I try to delete an opportunity record, will my trigger fire? Means no. Though your trigger is on the same object, the events are different. The event for your trigger to fire and the event that you performed are entirely different. So trigger will not fire. Now, I have written a trigger on account object and I'm trying to delete an opportunity. Will my account trigger fire? Means no, the objects are different. Was there any DML on the account? No. Then trigger on the account will not fire at all. So these two things will determine for you to understand if a trigger gets fired for a specific DML event happening on a specific record. These are the two things then. Okay, fine, understood. When we speak about event centric, you pretty much covered that events are nothing but insert, update, delete and undelete. So is it same for trigger? Means yes, pretty much same, but trigger is having few extra events. Though it is event centric, it is having few extra events. What extra events? We know that the events are just insert, update, delete and undelete. Then what extra events do we have? Means we have before insert, after insert, before update, after update, before delete, after delete, and we have something called as after undelete. Okay. So if you want your trigger to fire before insertion of this record, yes, you can go for it. Or if you want your trigger to fire after insertion, then you can go for it. In the same way for insert, update and delete, for insert, update, delete and undelete. Now you can ask me, okay, this is kind of confusing for me, but I just have one question by looking at this. Why is before undelete not present? Why is only after undelete present? Why is before undelete not present? Whenever you speak about a deleted record, where is it present? A very basic question. Record is present in the recycle bin. Is the recycle bin holding only records belonging to a specific object, or is the recycle bin holding records of any object? Yes, any type of record will be present in the recycle bin only the moment you try to delete it. So when you are trying to undelete it, system should first understand which object it belongs to. So system should move the record from the recycle bin container to the corresponding object container. And by the time the record is moved from the recycle bin container to the object container, the record is already present in the object, due to which only after undelete is present. When you say before undelete, then your trigger should be on the recycle bin object. But unfortunately, that's not possible, due to which we only have after undelete and there is no before undelete. So in your interview, someone asks you why is before undelete not present, means system doesn't even know in which object the record is present, because the record is currently present in the recycle bin or not in the actual object, due to which we do not have before undelete operation. Then when should I actually go for triggers? Before, I understand that we did not even cover the concept of when should we go for before and when should we go for after, but before that, I want you to be aware of the process. When should you actually go for trigger? Now there are two things: configuration, customization. We also call it as administration and development module in Salesforce. Every time, whenever you get a requirement, you should always think that can this be achieved by using admin module or not. When it's admin module, through point and click, only through configuration. If it cannot be achieved by using them, only then go for dev module. That is how you should always think. Whenever you get a specific requirement, always think that if your requirement is not possible by using admin module, only then go for developer module. Okay. When we speak about this, I have few topics in my mind. Validation rule, workflow rule. Validation rule is basically for restriction of record from being saved. Whenever you are trying to save a record at that specific point of time, only validation rule will fire, and this validation rule will block the record if it is holding some invalid data. That depends on the way how you have given the criteria. And when I speak about workflow rule, basically workflow rule is for automating the tasks. Like if you want some field to get updated, or if you want an email to be sent, it is basically for doing automation. It is not restricting a record. Even if the record is erroneous, workflow cannot stop. Validation rule is the only event centric component that can stop a record from being entering into the database. But where's our workflow rule? Workflow rule is only for the purpose of automating. And when we speak about automating, there are again certain limitations stating that when you do a field update, it can do field update only on the self object and on its parent, provided that the relationship is master detail. It cannot do anything on its children. It cannot do anything on its parent if the relationship is lookup, or it cannot. I mean, there are some limitations. So due to which we got process builder. And again, process builder is not something which is so user friendly and so much time consuming. So again, we have something called as flows, which is latest and greatest. This is how we have. So we already have these many. Then one should I go for trigger? When I have these many, why should I actually go for trigger? Let me tell you. Workflow rule, process builder, flow, validation rule. I'm ignoring flow for now because flow came just now. I'm ignoring flow for now. All these three will fire only when you are saving a record, which means only at the time of deletion, only at the time of insertion, or only at the time of updation. Now, what if I want to perform something at the time of deletion? I want to perform something at the time of undeletion. Neither of these will come into picture for me. Okay, fine. Let me speak about validation rule. When I speak about validation rule, it is restricting a record from getting saved, which is very good. But can I actually refer to a child record in my validation rule? If your validation rule is being written on the account object, and if you want to see something on the opportunity, can you do it? No. Can validation rule stop you from deleting a record? No. Okay. Now let's go to workflow rule. Can workflow rule update a grandchild record? No. Okay, let's go into process builder. Now I wanted to perform something on two unrelated objects. Those two are not having any relationship at all. Can I still do it? Means no. If you want to update a record, they have to be related. Only then the process builder can do something. Okay, now flow came into picture. Yes, flow tried to eliminate the need of writing a trigger to some extent, but not to a very complete extent, because even flow is having some limitations. You will understand about the limitations of a flow when you cover the entire topics on flow, or when you do enough hands-on. There are some limitations on flow as well. My topic is not about speaking about limitations on the flow. It is majorly on the triggers. So the concept here is there are some things which cannot be done by using these components, and when you come across such requirement, only then go for trigger. If at all you get a requirement which can be accomplished by making use of this, do not go for trigger. There are many reasons for that. First reason, when you are writing a code, let's assume that you have written some code and that code is moved to production. Once your code is moved to production, let's assume that it is not working as expected. You have to make some change. Okay, or they want to do some enhancement. That change cannot be done in production. Apex code cannot be modified in production. I'm stressing this. Apex code cannot be modified in production. There is no edit button shown to you at all. Then what is the way? You have to make that change again in sandbox, get it approved, get it tested, and then move the same change to production. In production, you cannot edit anything. That is the reason why you will not be given just a production. If you go to Salesforce and if you tell that I wanted to buy an org along with production, they will give you sandbox, because sandbox is the place where you can implement something and then move forward. So Apex trigger is one such a thing which you cannot modify in production. Even for a single one line change, you have to again go to sandbox, make that change and move it to production. But whereas when I speak about these components, any admin components, they can be modified directly in production also. If you're having access to production, you can modify validation rule. You can deactivate a validation rule, activate a validation rule, create a new validation rule, modify something, We can modify any of these directly in production, though it is not a good practice, but still there is a provision for you to modify anything that you are covering in admin module directly in production. But whereas when we speak about Apex, it is not at all allowed for you to make any change in production. You have to make the change directly in sandbox, and once it is tested and approved, only then move it to production. The process of moving your code from one, not code, moving your changes from one org to another org is called deployment. So deployment has to be performed if at all you make a change in Apex. That is one reason. And second thing is, if at all you're writing something, there should be a test class written for it. You'll understand what test class is all about in the coming sessions, but for now understand that we have to write test classes. Without writing test class, you cannot move your changes. There are some prerequisites. There is something called as code coverage and all. We are not going too deep, but there are some prerequisites. So because we are having these limitations, not just Salesforce, any person you come across will always tell you to go with configuration over customization for any requirement you come across. If at all they cannot be achieved by making use of this, only then go for customization. So this is the prerequisite that should be running in your mind while implementing a requirement. Just because you're so good in Apex, you cannot implement everything in Apex. I'm not telling that it is bad, but at the same time, it is not good. Okay. Now let us understand. Let's come back now to the event centric. So when we speak about event centric, we understood that there are around 7 events. Okay. When should I go for before insert and when should I go for after insert? But tell me, why do I have these two here? So for this, I will take one real-time example. Now I'm making up a scenario now. There is a person who is actually sending some items from this block to this block. Can anyone confirm me if you can see the movement of my mouse pointer? Just say yes in the chat if you're able to see the mouse pointer movement.
Yes.
Yes, right? Okay, fine. So this person is actually trying to send this specific object or some item to this specific end. Okay, and this receiver is telling that I cannot accept all the items. There are some specific criterias. And only if your item is meeting those criterias, I will accept them. And he has appointed few people to check. So there is one person over here, and there is also one person over here to do the corresponding checks. Now you are the sender, you are keeping in lot of effort, because to move this towards upside, it consumes a lot of effort. You are moving this record, and it came over here. And he tells you that no, this record is not fine. And let me tell you, there are these many people over here, and there are these many people over here. Now you tell me, when I am trying to move this ball, is it good to tell me that this ball is not actually fitting the requirement over here or over here? It is good to tell me over here itself, because if you tell me over here itself, my effort consumption has become very, very less. And I'm trying to, do my job in an effective way. Okay, if not this ball, then let me take the other ball. So in this way I'm ensuring. But now think about a scenario where a ball is being rejected at this specific place. Yes, I understand it is being rejected, but still it went till here. I had kept in lot of effort, and then I got to know that it is not good. So I have to again send it back by passing through all this, which consumed lot of energy for me. Now let me relate this with Salesforce. In Salesforce, I have something called as system validation rule, custom before triggers, and then custom validation rules. There are many duplicate rules as well. I'm not going through all. Just at a high level, I'm covering this. And then at this specific block, I have process builder, I have flows, and then I also have after triggers will be coming first. After triggers, and then process builders, and then flows. When you are trying to send a specific record, let's assume that there is a field which is mandatory and you have not populated it. If that error comes to you over here, then that's the most creepiest implementation. That should come here itself. That is why system validation rules will get executed first. So here itself, it is sending you back. System validation rules are passed. Then you have something called as before trigger. This before trigger will do the necessary checks. If there are any errors to be thrown, those errors will be thrown to you directly from here itself, and so it will be sent back. Then we have custom validation rules. If at all the custom validation rules are also passed, then this reach to this specific level, which means it is easy now for the ball to be pushed. It is easy because you're not pushing in upward direction, you're just pushing in the straight direction. So here what will happen, we have after triggers, we have process builders, and we have flows. Usually these are not used for restricting the record from being entered. These are used for doing some manipulations. But let me tell you, why is it in this specific shape? Why not in a straight line? Why is it in this specific shape? Why is it easy from here? Means at this specific point of time, what happens is record will be saved into the database. Record will be saved into the database, but the record will not be committed. Record will be committed over here. Record will be saved here, record will be committed here. Record will be saved means, how can I assume is, let's assume that the person whoever is doing is actually communicating to the receiver that okay, I received a ball, this is of so and so type. Means then the receiver is telling okay, then fine, I'm prepared for this to receive a ball. So that communication happens from here to here. But does it mean that he will be getting the ball? Means no, there are still some areas where the ball can be still sent back. So now let me tell you again, when you are trying to save a specific record, there is a field which was not filled. System validation rules came, the record was sent back. Now all validation rules, I mean all the fields were filled properly, but there is a trigger that is actually restricting. Okay, fine, sent back. It went custom validation rule, sent back. Now all these three are passed, record got saved. The moment record got saved, ID will be generated for that specific record. You will be able to access that record by making use of that ID. ID came for you because the receiver gave a confirmation. Okay, fine, I am prepared for this. How did the receiver give confirmation? By generating an ID. ID got generated for you. Once you get the ID, after triggers will get executed, and then the process builder, and then the flow. And if everything is done, then the record will be committed. Once it reaches here, then no one can actually send it back. It will be like a slope. It comes back. Now, if you still feel that okay, my record is erroneous, means now no one can stop it. You have saved the record. You either have to click on edit and perform the operation again, or delete the record. But there is no sending back. If you want, you can still send the record back till here. This is the last block. Once this process this block, then there is no such point for you. The record will be committed to the database. So now in the same way, you have to understand, do you want the restriction to happen over here, or do you want the restriction of your record to happen over here? Do you want the field manipulation to happen over here, or do you want the field manipulation to happen over here? You can decide that. Now you can ask me, I feel that before trigger is much efficient. Why should I use after trigger at all? Before trigger is far efficient, right? Means yes, there are some scenarios which you will understand when you should actually use after triggers. But most of the time, let us try to make use of before triggers whenever possible for our requirements. So keep this image in mind that you're rolling a ball from one side to another side. And first, initially, if at all you get to know that the record is erroneous, the resource consumption is very less. But if you get to know that the record is erroneous, at the last moment the resource consumption was very high, the rollback is still happening, because as part of the transaction atomicity, I have to do all or none. The rollback is anyways happening, but if the rollback happens at this point of time, that is helpful. But if the same rollback happens at this point of time, that is actually not a good implementation. Now let me come here. So I have something called as before insert, before update, after update, before delete, after delete, and then after undelete. Now in the same way, trigger is a class behind the scenes. When I say trigger is a class behind the scenes, means there is a class by name trigger in Salesforce. There is a class by name trigger in Salesforce. As there is a class by name trigger, obviously there will be some variables. Okay, what variables do I have for trigger? Means new. There is a variable by name new map, old map. There are some other variables, but first for now I'm just covering these concepts of these four variables. Okay, I know that these are variables. Okay, fine. What is the data type of this? Okay, this data type is of type list of s object, which means if your trigger is on account, then new is of type list of account. If your trigger is on opportunity, new is of type list of opportunity. Then new map, what is the type of it? The type is map of id comma s object. Okay, this is something huge which we have not seen. I know that map of string comma string I can relate to if it is map of string comma integer. What is map of id comma s object? Means this map will take id from you, and if you give the id, it will give you the record. It will just take the id and it will give you the record. That is what new map is for. What is this old? Again, list of s object, and again this is of type map of id comma s object. What are these for? Why are these for? At this point of time, we should also understand one more term called bulkification. There is one more term called bulkification. Okay, what is bulkification? Your trigger should work just fine even if it is dealing with one record or even if it is dealing with 10,000 records. Your trigger should be written in such a way. For your trigger to be written in such a way, your code should always think that you are getting a list of records, not a single record. That is how you have to write your record. Now, for you to understand which list of records you are getting, I am only creating one variable for you. Salesforce is creating one variable for us. It is telling that this I am giving you one variable for you, and that variable will hold the list of records which user is trying to insert. He can insert 3 records from the anonymous block, or he can insert 3000 records by using data loader, or he can insert just one record from the UI by clicking on the new button. No matter from which source, in which way, or how many records user is trying to perform, your trigger should be capable enough to do the job for me. Okay, and for you to understand which records are coming, which records are being updated, I have created one variable for you that is nothing but new. Now, how can you access this? Means just to say trigger.new. But let me also tell you, this trigger.new can be used only in trigger but not outside. If you use trigger.new in your anonymous block, I will throw an error stating that I don't know what it is. This can be used only inside a trigger. And what is this for? This will hold the list of records being inserted or updated when the user is trying to do something new. When I say new, something new is coming into the database. At that point of time, I am giving you the list of records that are being inserted or updated. Then what is this new map? This is how you have to write. Like, I'm not explicitly writing for everything. You have to say trigger.new, trigger.new map, trigger.old map. So this I will remove. So what is this trigger.new map for? Trigger.new map is basically a map with key as the ID and value as the record. So if you give me the ID, I will give you the record. If you do not give me the ID, then I cannot give you anything. So I'm also creating one more variable for you. You will understand the significance of these variables when we write a trigger. But Salesforce gave us these variables in order to leverage them and write our trigger in an efficient way such that it will not break even if multiple records are coming at once into our system. Then what is this old? Old is also basically list of records that are being updated or deleted. When you're trying to update a record or when you're trying to delete a record, this variable will be holding those records. And again, same thing here, as a record inserted or updated. But whereas when we speak about, I will say just INSS/update, so it will come in a single line. Okay, map with key as ID, map with key as ID and value as a record updated/deleted. Okay, now why do I have these many variables? Why should I make use of these means? I am not going to explain that. Only in the example you will understand why these are for. But for now, understand that we have something called as trigger.new, trigger.new map, trigger.old, and a trigger.old map. Now, before we actually write some logic, I will also show you one more thing. All these variables are not available in all these events. Only few variables are available in few events. Let us go through that. When I speak about before insert, if you look into this image, when you speak about before insert, the record is not even saved into the database, due to which ID won't be available. For ID to be available, the record should be saved. But when I say trigger.new map, trigger.new map is telling that if you give me ID, only then I can give you the new record, due to which trigger.new map is not at all available when you are trying to do the before insert. In your before insert, only trigger.new is available for you. Trigger.new map is not available because when I say before insert, ID itself is not generated yet. As ID is not generated, new map will be null. As new map is null, I am not writing it down. And old map won't be available at all, because when I say old, that should be present in my system. And you're inserting something which is completely new to me, so it is not even present. So old map are not even in the picture at all. Now, second event after insert. Okay, this is something, insertion is happening. So yes, trigger.new will be coming up, and at this point of time ID is present, because I told you that once a record is saved, ID gets generated. As ID is present, trigger.new map can be made use of. So trigger.new map. Then before update. So in before update, something new is coming into the system. Yes, a new value is coming into the system. When you say update, a new value is coming into the system, and yes, I also told you that new will be available at the time of insertion or also at the time of updation. So trigger.new, and is the record having ID? Though it is in before context, the record is still having ID because it is an existing record. As it is an existing record, ID is available. Trigger.new map is present for me, and I told that old and old map will be used at the time of updation and at the time of deletion. So trigger.old comma trigger.old map. Then what is my next event? My next event is after update. When I say after update, obviously trigger.new is available because trigger.new and trigger.new map are available at the time of updation. Old and old map are also available. Then before delete. When you say before deletion, is there anything new happening to the system? Something from the system is going out, so there is nothing new happening, due to which only trigger.old is available for us. Though it is happening in the before context, it is happening for an existing record for which the ID is available, due to which trigger.old map is also present. Now when I say after delete, again the same thing, because we are speaking about an existing record, due to which this is available for me. And then the last event, which is after undelete. When I say after undelete, it is same like insertion. So trigger.new and trigger.old map are available. You will not be able to relate to this till we work on it, but for now understand that when you are working on a trigger by making use of the event as before insert, this is the variable that you should make use of. I mean, this is the variable that is available for you to make use of, not you should make use of, it is available for you to make use of. And when you are working with after insert, these two are available for you. And when you're working for before update, these four are available for you. And when you're working for after update, these are available. Before delete this, after delete this, and after delete this. Now, quickly let us understand the process of how to write a trigger, and let's cover few scenarios. Then you will be able to relate to all this. And in our next session, we can work on advanced triggers in combination with Apex classes. So I'm coming to my dev console here. How should I create a new trigger? There are two ways for creation of a new trigger. One, come to file, click on new, and then choose Apex trigger. This is one way. Or other way is identify the object. For this specific object, you can see something called as triggers over here. Just come to triggers and click on new. Anything is fine, but I feel developer console is a good place for me because I can do everything that is related to Apex, everything related to development from dev console. So I'm coming here, clicking on file, and I'm choosing Apex trigger. As I told you that Apex trigger is event centric and object specific, it is first asking me to choose the object. Currently, for my first example, I want to choose account. What is the name that you wanted to give? And I just want to give the name as account trigger. I'm not so specific about the name for now. I'm just giving it as account trigger, and I'm clicking on submit. I have not done anything. I just click on submit. If you see, this prepared a by default structure for me. If you say this prepared a by default structure for me, what is it? It is telling trigger whatever I have given the name on account, and it also understood that before insert. This is not my intention here, but it gave before insert. Okay, let's understand each and every keyword here. First keyword, trigger, which is kind of self-explanatory. Okay, we are writing a trigger, so the keyword name is trigger, and then the name. Okay, trigger name, good. As we are telling that it is object specific, okay, object name came, so this trigger on this specific object. And I am telling you that it is event specific, so event came up here. So does it mean that for every event I have to create one trigger? Means no, it's not like that. One trigger can be working for multiple events. Now, how can I specify multiple events? I want to write a trigger that works for before insert and after insert also. How can I do it? Means just separate by a comma after insert. That's it. This is the syntax that you have to follow while writing a trigger. This is the syntax. Now, if you click on new button over here, I'm going to account triggers and clicking on new button here. If you see, it is asking you to provide the name and it is asking you to provide the events. The syntax is still the same, because syntax is something which the system can understand. It cannot be changed. So here I'm giving the name and it chooses the object, and then I'm providing the event. So remember that the first line of trigger itself should convey you the object and also the events. The first line should convey you the object and the events, because trigger is event centric and object specific. Then what should we do? Let's take a requirement and then maybe we will be able to relate to. Let us take one requirement. I made note of some examples. So first I'm speaking about insertion scenario. As part of my insertion, the very first example that I have is whenever an account record is created, set rating as hot. So I have a field by name rating on the account object. I have a field. So account fields. I have a field by name Where is it? I have a field by name rating. I want to set the value for this rating field as hot. When should this happen? This should happen whenever a record is being inserted. Now, let's look into this example. For setting the rating as hot, do I really have to wait for the record to get saved, use the ID and then update it, or can I do it at this specific point of time itself? Why should I wait for the record to get saved and then update it? That doesn't actually make sense to me. Let me make the changes during the initial go itself. So the requirement is clear that I have to perform something on the time of insertion. Okay. Now before insert or after insert, I do not need ID here, and I am moreover doing on this specific record as I do not have any dependency on ID. I will go for before insert only. So I'm choosing it as before insert. Fine. Give me 1 minute, please. Hey, I'm back. Sorry, my laptop went out of charge, so I immediately rushed to get the charger. Okay. So trigger account trigger on account before insert. As we want to set the value for rating field at the time of insertion, I don't really have to wait for the record to get saved. While saving the record or before saving the record only, if I keep the value, it will be easy for me. When I say easy for me, easy for the Salesforce on the resource consumption point of view. So what will I do? I will choose my event as before insert only. Now next thing, for before insert, what variables are available for me in order to write my code in an efficient way? What variables are available for me? Only trigger.new is available for me. Okay, fine, trigger.new is there. And I know the trigger.new is of type list of a subject. Now, how should I make use of trigger.new in my trigger? We have to understand two things here. First thing, iterations. Let's understand the concept of iteration here. Iteration is nothing but you want to execute a piece of code over and over again and again. You want to execute some piece of code over and over again and again. Now for this I wanted to know something from you. How many of you are completely aware of loops? Based on that I will decide how much time should be spent for this. How many of you are aware of iterations and loops? How many of you don't know about loops at all? Just say yes if you don't know anything about loops. Okay, I can proceed right then. Okay, nice. I'm proceeding with okay. So we all know that we have a while loop, do while loop, and then for loop. We all know that. As we all know that we have something called as while, do while, and for. I'm taking for as an example. Now what I wanted to do is integer I is equal to 1. Okay, there is a variable like this. I just want to print 10 numbers. Very simple plain requirement. I just want to print 10 numbers. So what I will do, I will write for integer I is equal to 1. Let me remove this here. Integer I is equal to 1, I less than equal to 10, and then I plus plus system.debug I, and I am clicking on execute. So now what will happen? I am seeing the numbers written from 1 to 10. Okay, nice. Now I have one more requirement. List of account lstacc is equal to select id comma name from account limit 10. Now I want to print name of every account. So okay, I can just say lstacc, but that will print everything in a single line. I want to print name of every record. So how can I do that? Obviously, I have to iterate through this specific list. Now, how will I iterate through this specific list? For integer I is equal to 0, I less than lstacc dot size, and then I plus plus. Then what am I doing here? lstacc of I dot name. I am trying to access the element in the specific list by making use of the index here. So what did I do here? Let me explain this one more time. I just created one list variable. To this list variable, I am giving some list of records. Then what am I trying to do here? I am just trying to calculate the size of it. It will give me 10 records. Obviously, it will give you 10. So I less than 10, I plus plus. Then what am I trying to do? Print the name of the first record present in the list. Once iteration is done, print name of second record, print name of third record, print name of fourth record. Like this, I am trying to iterate through every element present in this specific list and then printing the name of it. When I click execute, and when I click on debug only, I see that only names got printed because I am trying to make use of the index operator here and then doing this. But to be honest, Salesforce allows us, Salesforce tells us that this might not be a very good approach. Reason being, when you are saying lstacc.size, how will the system understand the size? For the system to understand the size, it should actually go through each and every element. Now, if I ask you, go to a class and tell me number of students present, what have you do? What should you do? You should count each and every member, which means you are traversing through each and every member. You are touching each and every student over there in order to get me the count. So put that aside. You went into a class and you counted the members, and then you came to me and you told me that, okay, there are 30 students in this class. Now I gave you a bag of pens and I told you that, okay, give one pen to each and every student. Now we are telling, okay, first student one pen, second student second pen, third student pen, fourth student pen, and you are giving it. Now again you came back to me and you told me that you anyways are giving me a bag of pens, right? Why do you want me to give you the count? You just give me the bag of pens. I will go into each and every student and I will put it. Why should I count it? I'm just traversing through each and every student twice. First time for counting, second time for giving them a pen. Why should I traverse them twice? You give me a bag of pens, I will go and blindly put it in the pocket of every student. In this way, I can avoid multiple trips. With only single trip, I'm able to do the job. This is what the concept is. And when you say size also, that is what we're actually trying to do. You're trying to get the size. How are you getting the size? By traversing through them. And then again, you're traversing through each and every person. So in order to avoid this, Salesforce came up with one more kind of for loop, which we call it as enhanced for loop. And the way how this works is, first identify what kind of object are you trying to iterate on. When I say object, it can be a standard object or it can be also a type of data type also. It should be a collection, that's it. It should be a collection. Just give some name for it. Okay, I'm just giving it as name. You want to iterate something of type this by giving a name as this. Then what should we do? Just put a colon and then specify the collection. This is the syntax. Put a colon first. Put a collection name. Okay, this collection is of type what? This collection is of type list of account. Okay, then put the account name here and then just create ACC. So this is same like for integer I is equal to 0, I less than lstacc.size and then I plus plus. So rather than creating one extra variable for integer, calculating the size and then incrementing every time, what are we trying to do? We are just telling that I want to iterate through lstacc. Okay, for every record that gets, I want one variable to store it. And what is that variable? ACC. And what is the type of that variable? That variable is of type account, because you're iterating through lstacc, which is a list of accounts, and so which you have created something of type like this. So think that you have to create variable and then type and then specify a colon. After the colon, provide the collection variable name. Then you can just say system.debug acc.name. That's it. You don't have to make use of indexing at all. What is it doing? It is just trying to iterate through every record and then placing the name. It is not counting. It is not even checking anything. How many records are there? For each and every record, it will just print the name. That's it. That is what this is. But when compared with this, obviously this is much efficient, due to which Salesforce always tells or recommends to make use of this for loop over this for loop. Does it mean that we are not allowed to use this? You are still allowed to use this, but when compared with this is much efficient, due to which go for this kind of for loop only. Now coming back to the requirement, as part of this requirement, what should we make use of? We should make use of just a trigger.new, but not any other thing. Okay, trigger.new is of type list of s object. In our specific scenario, s object is nothing but account. So now what I will do is I will write a for here for account obj acc and then trigger.new, because I know that trigger.new is nothing but a list of s object. List of s object is nothing but list of account. As I know that it is list of account, I'm creating one account here and then one obj acc, just one variable to access the account record that is being iterated. Now what should I do here as part of the requirement? I need to just set rating as hot. So obj acc dot rating is equal to hot. And also let me tell you the beauty now, as everything is happening in the before context, you don't even have to write the DML at all, because the record is not even saved. If the record is saved, then you have to write the DML, because you're trying to perform on a saved record. The record is not even saved yet, so you don't have to perform any DML at all. If you just write something like this, then this will work absolutely fine. Even if you insert 50,000 records by using data loader, the trigger is kind of tabbable, because you're iterating through those 50,000, and for every record you're doing something. Your trigger is not written keeping single record into consideration. Your trigger is written in a way such that it is handling bulk records as well. Now let us just try this. Going to accounts, clicking on new. I'm not giving any value for rating at all. It is blank, and I'm clicking on save. The moment I click on save, because I have some trigger in place, what is it trying to do? It is setting the value for my rating field as hot. I will just explain the trigger one more time. I know that I have to go with before insert, and for before insert, the available variable is trigger.new. Now we understood that this particular for loop is kind of efficient when compared with the traditional for loop, due to which we incline towards it. Object name, and then a variable name, and then the collection. Then what are we trying to do? For every record that comes into this specific for loop, we are just specifying the rating as hot. That is what we are doing. Now let's see a few more examples. Annual revenue should be present while creating account with billing city as dollars, which means whenever user is trying to create an account record with billing city as dollars, annual revenue should not be left null. Okay, so let us see this now. Now for this, what I have to do, this is not something which should happen all the time. This is a conditional mandatory field. We are trying to make a field mandatory conditionally. Okay, what is that condition here? Our condition is billing city should be dollars. Okay, so forever, whenever you have to specify a condition, if is the condition that you have to make use of. I will explain about if else if in the next session, but for now let's understand that if is something which we will be making use of in order to execute some logic. In order to execute some logic only if the condition that you write is true. So if you write something like this, this will be executed only if the condition whatever you write within this parenthesis becomes true, else this will not be executed. So if, what is my condition here? My condition is that billing city should be dollars. Billing city should be dollars of which account? The record that is being iterated. You are not dealing about the records that are present in your system. You are speaking about the record which is being iterated. So if obj acc is billing city is dollars, if obj acc billing city is dollars, how can you check if the billing city is dollars or not? If you say single equal to, it means you are assigning a value. But when you say double equal to, it means that you are trying to do a comparison. So you are trying to do a comparison. This will become true only if billing city value is dollars. So if the user is trying to insert a record with billing city as dollars, then what should happen? Then an error should be thrown. Error should be thrown for all the records that are being inserted, or only for the record for which this condition is met? Only for the record for which this condition is met. Then what will we do again? Again obj acc. How should we throw an error from a trigger? I understood that we have written a condition. What is the syntax for throwing an error? The syntax for throwing an error is just to say add error. This is a method that is available to you as part of the native trigger functionality of Salesforce. You have to write something called as add error. What is the error that you want to show? Annual revenue should be present. Okay, I think I missed the condition quite. Annual revenue should be present while creating, which means if billing city is dollars and annual revenue is not present, only then we need to get that error. So I don't think annual revenue is a field. Yes, annual revenue is a field. So if annual revenue is null, so if the billing city is dollars and annual revenue is null, what should happen? Annual revenue should be present, as an error should be thrown. So how will the error be thrown? If you say add error. So to what should you write add error? Add error should be written for the record for which the error should be thrown. What is the record? Obj acc is the record, because we have created obj acc as an instance for account, and this will hold the record that is being iterated. Now we understood that this record is meeting this criteria, and so for this specific record we are throwing an error. Now let's see if that works or not. So I will just try to create a new record. Account name test trigger, and for billing city I will mention it as dollars, and I'm clicking on save now. Now if you see, I got an error stating that annual revenue should be present. This is same like a validation rule. Annual revenue should be present. As I have not specified annual revenue, I am getting this error. Now if I remove the value from billing city and if I try to save it, then the record is allowing me to save, because my criteria is so concrete enough that this error will come only if the billing city is dollars and annual revenue is null. Now let me try to insert the record by giving billing city as dollars, and let me also provide value for annual revenue. Where is the field annual revenue? Here it is. So I'm giving the value as 1500 and I'm clicking on save. So now it allowed me to save. So what did we try to do here? We are just trying to throw an error. Yes, the same error can be thrown even while putting it as after insert. But what is the drawback? Unnecessarily you're allowing the record to be coming till this specific extent and then throwing it back. Why should you do that? If you know that this record is erroneous, restrict it in the initial go itself. So if billing city is dollars and annual revenue is null, we are trying to throw an error. Then whenever account is created and if rating is not specified, then default it to hot. Okay, let's understand this again. What am I trying to do here? Whenever account record is being inserted, I am just specifying the rating as hot. Now I am trying to create an account record. As part of my account record, my customer told me that rating should be warm. He told me that rating should be warm. Okay, fine. I gave some value and I clicked on save. Though I gave rating as warm and I clicked on save, immediately rating got changed to hot. Why did this happen? Why did the rating got changed to hot? Means in my code, I am blindly giving value for rating as hot. If account is being inserted, give rating as hot. So now what is the requirement telling? The requirement is telling that if rating is not specified, only then default it to hot. If rating is specified, then do not do it. If rating is not specified, only then do it. Now how will I see if the rating is specified or not? So for this, what I will do, if obj acc dot rating equal to what is it, none here. So I will say something like hyphen none hyphen, and then I will give obj acc dot rating is equal to hot. Okay, but let me also tell you, if I go into these fields of rating, there is no such value by name none. If I come here, there is nothing as none. Then why is this none coming up? Or even if I select none, it is not showing up anything. Then what is it for? Means none is just only at the UI level. But in the backend, what is the value? Backend value is just blank, or backend value is just null. Or if you are still not understanding what is the backend value, then do one thing. Just make it as none for now. Click on save. Come to developer console and write a Soql query. So select ID comma rating from account where ID is equal to, I copied ID from the URL and I'm clicking on execute. I see that the value, okay, now it is coming up as blank. Okay, but we saw that the value is none over there, but if you see here, it is actually blank. So how can I do it? I can come to my trigger and I will just say blank. Rather than providing it as null, I will just say it as blank. What Salesforce again tells is, do not use this blank checks. Blank checks are not really that good. Then what you do means, if you remember, I told you that every data type or every keyword that you use is actually a class. And if you just say string class apex, it will show you all the methods supported. And there is one such method called is not blank or is blank. There is a method called is blank, and there is also a method called is not blank. When you use this, then the system will check, okay, if you give white space, or even if it is empty, or even if it is null, I will do all the checks. If you just give me space also, I won't accept. You need to give me a valid value, else it's considered as blank only. So this will do all those checks for you. But if you have to do all those checks, it will be becoming difficult for you. Though it is a pick list, I'm telling, if it is kind of a text field, you have to write something like this: equal to blank, or user to give multiple spaces. I mean, that can also happen, right? So you will be okay. I'm not pasting everything. Let's think only this now. So you have to write something like this, even if it is null or even if it is blank, because null is different, blank is different. If you do not specify anything, it will be null, and blank is something which you are specifying. So rather than writing all this, you don't take all the headache. You just make use of this specific method called not blank or blank. For my requirement, I want this to happen if it is blank. So for this, I have a method called blank. So just use this is blank. Okay. How to use this? Just to say is blank and provide the field name. Is blank. But is blank is a method present in which class? It is present in string class. So you have to say string dot is blank. When you say string dot is blank objs dot rating, now the system will understand that okay, what is the value present for objs dot rating? Is it null? Fine, make it as true. Is it blank? Make it as true. Is it just holding spaces and not anything else? Okay, then even then make it as true. So if any of this situation occurs for this specific rating field, then immediately we are specifying the rating value as hot. So what did we try to do here? We are defaulting the value, but on a conditional basis. How did we specify the condition? Rather than we writing our own condition by using the operators we have leveraged the native methods that Salesforce has provided us in order to make sure that we are not missing any edge case scenario. Now, if I try to create a new account record, if I try to say, okay, if I try to say warm and if I click on save, this time it will not default it to hot because this condition is not met. As this condition is not met, it did not even go inside. So this is how I am trying to ensure that my conditions are being executed. My statements are being executed conditionally. Then if industry is banking, rating should be hot. Let's ignore this requirement then. If industry is rating, then if industry is banking, rating should be hot. Okay, very straightforward. If objacc dot industry equal to banking, then rating should be hot. Yes, as simple as that. No change needed. Whenever a new opportunity is created with stage as closed one, set close date as today. Now this is an opportunity. So for implementing this, what should I do? I have to create a new trigger on opportunity. And what will be the event? They mentioned it as created. So before insert only. What will be the corresponding context variable? Trigger.new. What will be the logic that I have to return inside for loop? If opp.stage name is equal to closed one, then opp.closeDate is equal to system.today. I told this at the time of creation of a date variable in today's class. So what I have to do here? opp.closeDate is equal to system.today. Very simple. Then whenever a new account is created, set industry as banking. Again the same thing. So I will just say objacc.industry is equal to banking. These are just for some hands-on examples. That's it. Then okay, this is different example. This is different. Sorry. Whenever a new account is created with industry as banking, whenever a new account is created with industry as banking, create an opportunity with stage as prospecting, closed at 15 days from today, and name as accounts. Okay, this is a good example. Whenever a new account is created with industry as banking, what should happen? An opportunity should also be created. So whenever an account is created, an opportunity should also be created. At this specific point of time, I cannot go for before. Why? Because for you to create an opportunity, you need the ID of its account. Without knowing ID of the account, how can you create an opportunity? So for when will you get the ID of the opportunity? You will get ID of the opportunity only once the record is saved. Once the record is saved, what is the event centric component related to Apex that gets fired? After trigger gets fired. So at this specific point of time, what should I do? I have to write my trigger on account in the after context. So let me do that. I'm removing this logic, whatever I have written. In the after insert, what am I trying to do here? If at all the account industry is banking, okay, fine. Objacc dot industry equal to banking. Then what should happen? Then create an opportunity. Opportunity created. We understood the DML logic. So I will write say opportunity opp is equal to new opportunity. opp.name is equal to what should be the name of the opportunity? Name of the opportunity should be same as the account name. Okay, objacc.name. Then what should be stage name of the opportunity? Stage name of the opportunity should be prospecting. Okay, I'm specifying stage name is equal to prospecting. Then what should be close date of the opportunity? Close date of opportunity should be 15 days from today. Okay, I know how to get today's date. Then how should I say 15 days means there is one more method called add days. When you say add days, that will add 15 days for you. If you understand the system class, you will find this method. But for now, I'm just saying add days. Then what should happen? Then I should insert this opportunity. Okay, very simple. Insert obj opp. Now I'm clicking on save. Let me just test this. Going to accounts, clicking on new. Now I'm giving test H, and for industry, I'm specifying that it should be banking. Clicking on save. Okay, fine. I see that no opportunity came up for this. This is strange. Now I will again go to the opportunity tab, and if I click on new this week, I see test H came up because the account name is test H, but this opportunity is not linked with this account. Why is this opportunity not linked with this account? Means there is a field called account name for which I have to select this, but I did not do it unfortunately. So due to which it not happen. So what should I do? I should also tag this opportunity with my account. And what is the field? Account ID. I told you that if at all you have to make use of a relationship field in Soql, you have to append ID. Same applies in Apex also. So obj opp.account ID is equal to objacc.id. Now I am clicking on save button. Now let me perform the same operation. I'm just trying to create a new account with industry as banking, and I'm clicking on save. Now account record got created, and for the same account record I see an opportunity record being present. But let me tell you that this is absolutely fine. I have an if condition present, and I wrote the logic for creation of an opportunity. Yes, completely fine. Now from data loader, I am trying to insert 500 records at once. Okay, 500 records are being processed over here. Then for all the 500 records, industry is banking. Now you tell me how many times will this statement be executed? The statement will be executed 500 times in a single transaction. But what is the limitation we have? We should not have more than 150 DML operations in a single transaction. Then how can we avoid it? Yes, the only way to avoid DML operation is create a list. So list of opportunity LSTOPP is equal to new list of opportunity. Then what are we trying to do? We are trying to add the opportunities into this list. And then what we will be doing? We will be writing our DML outside the for loop. We will be writing the DML outside the for loop. So now even if we insert 50,000 records at once, DML statement is only one, because we avoided having my DML statement inside the for loop. It is a prerequisite, not a prerequisite. It is a best practice to be followed while writing a trigger or while writing any Apex code to avoid DML statements or Soql queries inside for loops. You will never know size of this specific variable. So due to which always avoid DML statements and Soql queries inside for loops, else you will end up having many governor limits. Okay, I think I wrote a wrong spelling here. So what did we try to do here? We just avoided. But are we stopping the records from being inserted? No, we are not stopping. What are we trying to do? We have created one list for the same sake, and into this list we are adding all those records, and at the end we are trying to do the insert operation. Now few people also have this practice to say something like this: do this DML only if this list is holding some records. Few people do this. lstopp.size greater than 0, only then do this. This is absolutely fine. But I personally do not recommend writing this. What I feel is, why do you want to know the size? You have to count each and every element in order to get to know the size of it. Why do you have to do that? If you know that this list is holding at least one element, then you are anyways doing the DML. So you just wanted to know if the list is holding at least one element or not. For that, you don't need to know the size. So for this, we have something called as isEmpty. I covered this. We have something called as isEmpty. Just put an exclamation mark over here. So you are telling, if the list is not empty, then do the DML. So how will the system check if the list is empty or not? System will go into the list. If it finds at least one element, then fine, I am done. I am not counting everything. Now imagine if you say size, and if the list is holding 30,000 records, system should traverse through 30,000 records in order to give you 30,000 as a number. But my requirement is not to know about 30,000 at all. My requirement is, if size is greater than 0, that is enough for me. So in such scenarios, just to make use of isEmpty. isEmpty will help the system to utilize less number of resources. Having if condition is good. If you do not have if condition, it will not throw in error. Having if condition is absolutely good. But rather than writing dot size greater than 0, I recommend to make use of not and then isEmpty, because we do not have any method like this. Is not empty. There is no such method. We only have isEmpty, and due to which I'm adding an exclamation mark over here. And this is a very well written Apex trigger code where there are no bad practices implemented. So what did we just try to do here? We are trying to iterate through the trigger.new. We have our condition in place, and we have created an instance, initialized it, and then to this instance we populated all the mandatory field values. Then rather than doing DML just inside the for loop, what did we try to do? we added this specific record, whatever we are trying to add into a list, and then outside the for loop, we are trying to do the DML. But before doing DML, we just wanted to ensure that the list is holding at least one record for the DML to be performed. And so we have one if condition written as well. So this is how we are doing it. Now I have few assignments for you. I want you people to work on these things. I'm pinging these in the Zoom chat. 7th example, ignore it. I want you people to do it. And in the next class, I will be covering these examples. So I saw a few people have not still covered the concept of whoops. I seriously and sincerely recommend you people to cover the concepts of whoops with the playlist that was shared by Anand in the group. Go through those recordings. They will actually help you. And if you have not done yet, do it today before you see the recording of this session. If you understand oops concept, today's concepts will be kind of easy for you to understand. Cover oops concept if not done already, and then view this recording once it is uploaded in YouTube. And in our next week, I will be covering these scenarios along with Apex classes, and then I think we should be good. So it's time for questions now. Can we have multiple triggers on a single object? Yes, we can have multiple triggers on a single object, but that's not a good practice.
And Aditya, if we are having the multiple triggers on a single object, so what will be the execution? Like how
there is no you cannot control the order of execution. Same like when you have multiple workflows on one object, you will not know which workflow will get executed first. So that's why it's not a good practice to have multiple triggers on one object. It is always recommended to have only one trigger per object, but it's not a limitation or a restriction. But it is recommended to have only one trigger. Use one trigger for one object and write all your code over there. Can we have nested maps, like maps with many lists and maps in it? Yes, it is allowed.
Aditya,
Yes.
Can you please run that code? I have pasted in a chat.
Sure. I'll do that. Siri is your name, right?
Yes.
Is this the one? I'm not sure if you are seeing my screen on the chat or not. I will paste it. Is this the code?
Yes, Aditya.
Okay, so insert. Is this insertion not happening?
Insertion is happening. I just want to update the test DML. It is not updating. It is creating series another new record. It's not updating test DML. I have such.
Sure. I'm doing it now. So I just copy pasted your logic. Okay, and before doing that, let me try to delete all the records that I have created today.
Okay.
Okay, fine. So I'm just inserting first, then I will do the update. Okay.
Yeah.
Clicking on execute. Clicking on accounts. Okay. So I see a record. I don't have it. Hey, why Siri came?
Yeah, you have highlighted now.
You have not clicked on the execute highlight.
Yeah. My bad. Sorry. Okay, so I'm clicking on execute highlighted now. I'm not clicking on execute. So only this logic I'm executing. Clicking on execute highlighted. So I see test.dml got created. Okay. Now I'm coming here, executing only this logic now. Clicking on execute highlighted. Let me confirm. Yes, name is test.dml. Clicking on execute highlighted. Coming over here, reloading the page. It got updated with Siri. You might be having some workflows or process builders or flows or some triggers in your system that is actually overriding.
Experience, Aditya. I'm seeing two records.
No, it shouldn't matter. Even if it is lightning, maybe we will connect after this session. Probably, maybe I can help you.
Fine.
Okay. Is it actually required to initialize the list with new before using it? If you're adding an element to your list, that has to be initialized. If you're not using equal to, then it is null. Blind rule. Single trigger for all objects. No, sir, that's not possible. Trigger is object specific. You need to have trigger for the corresponding object where you are doing some DML. Could you please repeat why is empty use instead of size? So think like this. If I ask you to tell me if there is a member present in a, let's assume that You're a teacher. Okay, I ask you to go to a class and tell me, are there students present or not? How much time will it take to get answer for you? Versus if I ask you to go and tell me count of students present in a class. So when I ask you to get me the count, you have to traverse or you have to iterate through each and every student in order to get me the count. That will take you some time. But if I ask you to tell me if there is a student present in a room, means you can just have a glance and you can immediately tell me if there is a student or not. Same with isEmpty and dot size. When you say dot size, system should actually use some resources in order to get you the count of records present. But when you say dot isEmpty, it will just see if there is at least one record, then fine, I am done. I don't have to go through each and every record. Could you please post your blog? It is similar to work with. Yes, see, Classic and Lightning, the only difference is the front end, okay. But when we speak about backend, it is still Apex. When we speak about Classic, you have Visual Force pages, Apex triggers, Apex classes. When we speak about Lightning, you have Aura components or LWC, but still Apex classes and Apex triggers are still the same. Apex is a platform that is not changed just because of the experience you are making use of. Because Apex is purely something which is running behind the scenes, so it has nothing to do with Lightning or Classic. Post blog link in chat, okay. I will share PPTs with Anand and he will share them in the group. Paste before insert. Okay, the examples. Yes. I will paste all these examples and maybe you can work on this. So try to work on these scenarios and maybe if you have any questions also, maybe we can cover them over in our next Saturday session. But try to work on this. This will be good opportunity or good example for you to get hands-on. I can see that there are plenty of methods in developer.salesforce.com where it is mandatory to go through all methods. Even I haven't gone through all the methods, to be honest. See, the more you practice, the more you will get to know about the methods. That's it. It's not there is a prerequisite that you have to go through. Only then you can write a program. Even if you don't know those methods, also you can still write your program. But it just speaks about the efficiency. When we speak about efficiency, it's always better to make use of something given by Salesforce rather than you writing something on your own. I mean, obviously, to be honest, I only don't know most of the methods that are present. Can you please explain the trigger.new? See, trigger is a class name. New is a variable name that is present in the class trigger. Okay. New variable is of type list of S object. Where am I? Yeah. New variable is a type. New variable is of type list of S object, means list of account space new is how it is present in the class trigger. Unfortunately, we cannot see the code written for the classes created by Salesforce. So you just have to use them. You cannot see the code of them. And then what is it for? What will it be holding means when you are trying to insert a record or update a record, that record will be present in this list of S object. That record, the list of records, when you're trying to do bulk records, bulk will be present. When you're doing only single record will be present. When you're using a list, it doesn't mean that you can use only single record, right? Can we send notification? S object is Salesforce object. It could be either custom or standard. So we, as a generic, we call it as S object. Can we send a notification, SMS and email from trigger? SMS, you have to use some third-party applications. That is not something available for free of cost, because for SMS you need some network providers and all. That can be done by using coding, but you need to make use of some third-party providers. Speaking about email, yes, email can be done in a straightforward way. We have one specific class written for that by name single email message. If you go to single email message, they have written us some code. This is from Salesforce only. If you paste this specific logic in your Apex, then it will send you an email. I'm pasting this as well. You can see, you can set the to address, CC address, everything whatever you want. In the S object record, which is in value part of a map, does ID field exists or not exist, Aditya? If key is not present, then map entry won't be available at all. Key is mandatory for a map entry to be present. If ID, that's the reason why in before insert we are not having trigger.new map. Why is trigger.new map not available in before insert? Because ID is not present. In a map, for an entry to be available, you need to have the key present. If key is not present, then entry cannot be added at all. Due to which trigger.new map is not present in before insert.
Aditya, if we don't have idea of the key, like what the key was available, but we have the value, so
No,
can we find it?
No. From value you can't. You have to iterate through all the elements from the map, and then okay, if this is the value, I mean, if you can compare with every value in the key with the value whatever you have, and then fetch it. But there is no such thing like dot get when you have value with this. Got my point?
Yes. Got
Yeah.
it.
Adityan, can you also share
Any
this
limits
text?
for holding? Yeah, sorry.
Can you also share in chat this text of trigger? Which you should,
Sure. I will share these files. I will share these
Okay.
files along with PPT. Maybe I think Anand can share them in Telegram.
Okay.
Okay. Any limits for holding records in collections? Any limits for holding records in collections? Yes. Not more than. I will show you that. Wait. If you see here, there should be one. Yeah. I think there is no such limitation, I believe. So I think I'm sorry, I have to get back for this. Any limits for holding records in collection? I'm not really sure, but I know that one Soql query cannot fetch more than 50,000 records. That I'm aware, but I'm not exactly sure. And again, in a single DML, in a single transaction, you cannot perform DML on more than 10,000 records. That is something I'm aware. But for holding records in collections, Gaurav, I have to check that. I'm sorry, I don't have an answer for now. Any limits for holding records in collections? I have to check that. I will give you this link. Maybe this can give you all the limitations that we have in Salesforce. This is a must-have document for every Salesforce developer. This will tell you how many transactions are allowed, within how much time should this be done. Sorry. I think I have to ping for everyone. Yep, I pinged the link in the group. You can make use of this. What is synchronous? What is asynchronous? Okay. Fine, I will take this. Synchronous means the moment you click on the button, the action is happening. Okay, the moment you click on a button, some action is happening. Immediately it is happening. That is called synchronous. What do we say sync? Sync means if okay, you're having a watch with you and I'm having a watch with you. Let's say both be in sync means we both are setting same time so that we can be in sync. That's what sync means. So the moment you click something, action is happening. That is what synchronous means. But when you say asynchronous, what will happen is the moment you start executing an action, the action will not be executed immediately. The action will be present in some queue. It will wait for some resources to be available, and when the resources are available, the execution happens, which means you have no call on when the action can happen. You can just say that the action to happen, but the action can happen at any point of time. That is what asynchronous means. Triggers are synchronous because the moment you save a record, triggers are getting fired. Thank you. Trigger synchronous, batch Apex, asynchronous. I mean, there are still many other asynchronous things in Apex. We have one session for that. How do you tell the code I want asynchronous? How do you tell the code I want async? I mean, Lin Cha, I'm sorry, I'm not able to pronounce your name correctly. Next Sunday, probably next Sunday, entire topic will be on asynchronous Apex. You will be getting a complete overview on the advantages of asynchronous Apex over synchronous Apex, and how can you identify that. It's an entire session. I can't really give in a single sentence about the answer, but at a high level, asynchronous is something which does not happen immediately. Thank you. So speaking about triggers, I want you all people to work on the examples that I have posted in the chat. Utilize this opportunity, try to work on the triggers, get enough hands-on, and if you still have some questions, try to jot all those questions and share them with Anand, and maybe in the next session I can spend some time just to go through the questions, and then I will start with the topic. Okay, but the recommendation is everyone please do practice on the triggers. If you do not practice, then everything will be just blown up once. So I
So
could pause. Yeah, tell me.
Can we write multiple handler classes for a single trigger?
Up to you. You can do. There's no such restriction. You can have it.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you all for your great time sitting for nearly 4 hours.
Yeah.
Thank you for making this session available.
I want to thank especially Aithin for preparing, making and preparing many Apex developers
Oh, that's a big statement. Thank you. I see it as my pleasure.
Yeah, it is. You have so much energy. 4 hours is very long, actually.
Thank you.
That's a
Thank you
big.
for that. Yeah, and I see someone posted me that snippet. I mean, I don't remember. I think Siri it was. Siri, can you stay back, please?
Yeah,
At all
sure.
you're available. Sure, sure.
Yeah,
Okay,
sure.
fine. I think so. How can I reach out to you now to see?
Aditya, can I have your Twitter ID?
Can you connect with me or LinkedIn, please?
Yeah, sure.
I'll share my LinkedIn profile here.
Yeah.
I'll share all the notepad and also the PPT sessions with Anand, and probably he will find the appropriate medium to share with you all.
Yeah, I have enabled
Media. Okay, I'll
meeting
share it in
space.
Telegram directly then. Yes, I will do that.
I enabled.